Now let's take a look at the Fairlight page and how we can use it to mix our audio, make everything sound nice. Let's open the 5A Fairlight project, and towards the bottom of the screen, I'm just going to click on Fairlight. That's going to bring our whole timeline into Fairlight, just like it does with the other pages. And let's take a look at the interface. Fairlight is pretty much where you do all of your audio mixing. It's like all the advanced controls and everything for actually working with audio. Now, a lot of the stuff that you could do in Fairlight, you could actually do in the edit or cut pages. In fact, what I like to do is get my audio pretty well laid out and timed out and edited as far as, left and right, like moving things around in time, get things like 80% there in the edit page, and then move to the Fairlight page to do just kind of some tweaks and make things a little bit nicer. So let's take a look around the interface. In the upper right-hand corner, we have our viewer, and this shows the video from the timeline. Of course, when I scrub through it, you can see that video preview. And below there, we have the mixer. This is where you'll spend quite a bit of time in Fairlight. If you're familiar with audio production, this will make a whole lot of sense. We'll go over it more in a second, but basically each track laid out in the timeline is laid out vertically here, and this is where you can add all kinds of effects and routing and change pan, change volume levels. A lot of stuff happens here in the mixer. To the left of the mixer, we have our timeline, and this works a lot like the timeline in the edit and cut pages. You can hit Shift-Z to zoom out and see everything. This is where all of our tracks will go. Now, here we have the audio tracks, but we can actually bring up the video tracks too. And all we have to do is click on this button that's Timeline View Options, and that has a few different icons. This is really similar to the one in the edit page, but up here in the upper left-hand side, we have the video tracks. If you click that, that brings up kind of a preview of all of our video tracks from the edit page. But why would you need video tracks if you're not really editing video? Well, video tracks are really nice to be able to see specific parts in your movie. You can kind of use it as more of a visual reference for the timeline. It's easy to pick out where my graphics are by just going to my Fusion compositions. It's just a nice way to work. And if you're freaked out by just a big, huge audio timeline, this will look a little bit more familiar. Above the timeline, we have our toolbar, just like the other pages. And above this, we have our meters. This is a really big, scary looking panel that looks really complicated, but all it really is, it's really just a bunch of different meters for each track. So when I play this back, we can see the meters bouncing for the dialogue on channel 1 and the music on channel 2. Here at M1, we have our main mix. That's just what the program is actually going to sound like, how loud that's going to be. And we also have our loudness meters over here. And this is really, really helpful if you're doing a mix for broadcast, because there are certain ranges and certain loudness settings that need to be hit for certain broadcast programs. And all of that is really going to depend on the network that you're going to be delivering to. But that's where you set that. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that just because it's really specific, but that's where that happens. So this is a great way to see kind of an overview of everything that's happening in your audio mix. From even if you have 30 tracks, you can see which ones are the loudest, which ones, and where everything's hitting. Now you have kind of a version of that down in the mixer, but it's with a lot more controls and stuff. And there's just more like a lot of stuff in the way. If you're just looking to see how loud things are, you can look up here. It's something that, unless you're doing a really, really complicated mix, you probably don't need. So it's there if you need it. In the upper left-hand corner, we have our buttons to open our panels. We have our media pool, which again works the same way as the other pages. We have our effects library, works the same way as the other pages. Of course, it's limited just to audio effects because this is the audio page. So you can browse through and find any effects that you might want to apply. We also have an edit index, which can bring up some quick information about your project if you need it, as well as a list of markers if you have that. The fourth button over is our sound library. Now this is super cool. This is a panel that will let you search for sound effects that are on your system and preview them without importing them into your project. It's pretty much just optimized to find sound effects really quickly. So like if I need a whoosh, I can type WOSH, and now we have all of these different sound effects that will show up, and it's really, really handy. So let's say I like this sound effect. I can grab this and just drag it into the timeline and add it just like that. Super easy. So the sound library is a great way to find sounds on your system and lay them into your timeline really easily, what you might be doing in the Fairlight page. One note though, the sound library is actually also available on the edit page. If you go here, under sound library, you can do basically the same thing. It kind of depends on just what you feel like doing. If you're more comfortable adding stuff in the edit page, that works fine. Fairlight is just more kind of focused towards audio. So let's take a look at doing a couple things here. We have this sort of roughly mixed, which means that we can actually hear the VO over the music.
Only notice trees. but also logs.
Now, we might decide that this needs to change a little bit later, but it's okay for now. Let's add a few things to just make this a little bit sweeter. And we're going to use our sound library to do that. Let's go to about 29 seconds, and I'm going to zoom in just by holding Alt and rolling on my mouse wheel to shot 102 here. And we'll see this is kind of a close-up of her footsteps on this wood. Now, we're not going to go through at this level through this entire project during this training. You're welcome to do that yourself, but I'll show you basically how you would do something like lay in Foley just to make things a little bit more immersive. Foley is basically just sound effects that are added in later, which is great for the sound library. The first thing that you're going to need to do is actually load sounds into your sound library, because you won't have all the sounds that I have on my system on your system. The way that you do that is in the upper left-hand corner here in our sound library panel. In the top right corner, there's 3 dots. Go ahead and click on Add Library. That's going to ask you, hey, where do your sounds live? And in the files that you downloaded for this training, there should be a folder called SFX. Go ahead and just select that folder and hit Select Folder. Now it's going to scan all those clips and it's going to think about them, and it's going to add them to your sound library so that you can quickly access them. And that's what we're going to use to do some Foley here. All right. When it's done, it'll say it's successful, hit OK. And now you should be able to search for the sounds that I'm going to search for. First thing I'm going to search for is step. And you should have some stuff come up. I added a couple more words just to make it easier for me to see what you're seeing. You should pretty much have all of these WB steps wood boots. That's what we're going to use. And this sound library is really cool because you can just double click any of these to hear them. And once you find one you like, you can just drag it into the timeline. We'll just drag it into this new track. And I can make the track bigger or smaller just by dragging this little line up and down. There we can see the waveform. And you know, we could see the waveform for the other ones, but we don't really need to right now. And now I can play through this. And I'll try and find the exact moment. I'll just move back and forth with my left and right arrows. I want to find the exact moment that she steps. Let's maybe not worry about this first step first. And I want this right shoe right there. That's where that step starts. I'm just going to zoom in and I'm going to move this to start right about at the same time. I'll also hit the S on this track. That's for solo. That's going to mute the other tracks so that I can just hear this track. There we go. So that works pretty well. Let's add a couple more steps just to make this complete. There we go. And we're going to do that the same way. Let's do this left foot somewhere in there and the right foot somewhere in there. Let's use different ones. And the left foot starts right about there. I'll use 106 this time. And there we have some basic steps laid in. Maybe I'll add one more. And you can trim these just like you would in the edit page. And it looks like she's already kind of walked here. And now we have our basic footsteps Foley. This obviously works really well because we have the same kind of shoe on the same kind of surface. So it's not always this easy. Sometimes you might have to go record them yourself. These are actually recorded for a library of sounds that we have available. So that works well. And now I'm going to rename this track so that I can keep track of it. And we'll rename this footsteps, and might as well rename these while we're at it. Music. All I'm doing is just double clicking on them. We'll call this VO. So we have VO, music, and footsteps. Make sure to save. Now let's add just another layer of fun to this. Sound design is all about layering sounds. So let's go back to our sound library, and I'm going to type CREAK, creak, and that should bring up the Rustic Creek's floor sounds. These again are recorded for one of our libraries, and they're just kind of a nice little subtle creaky kind of sound. It's kind of a rule in movies that if there's anything made out of wood, it's always creaky, doors always squeak, everything just is freaking loud all the time. So let's grab this and drag that in here. And I'll just put this kind of starting at one of the footsteps, and I'll make sure to solo this new track as well. And it's a little much. Maybe we'll start it at the second one. And what you usually try and do is lay sounds down so they're a little bit much, but they're at least timed right and somewhat believable. And then you just dial them back, right? So I'll grab number 2 here, and maybe we'll start that right around this time. And let's add one more in between. I'm gonna lay that in there. There we go. So now we have a really creaky floor. Again, this sounds crazy. It's like way over the top, but we're gonna dial it in a second. And now, let's add one more layer. I want to add some ambience. Ambience is like the glue that holds everything together. It's the sound that happens when there aren't any other sounds going on. We happen to have some really cool ambience. If we type forest, We have some nice kind of forest ambience here. I have 2 on my system, but you should just have 1. And again, I can just grab this and drag it down to a new track, and it'll make a stereo track for us. Now, I'll actually just close my sound library to give us a little bit more room. And now we have this ambience that we can lay under everything. I'll make sure that's soloed as well. And it's obviously way too loud, but again, we're gonna mix that in a second. But it's cool because we can add this ambience under whatever shots might be making that ambient sound. So anything that's in the forest probably is safe to say that would probably be that ambient forest sound. The only thing that might be different is right here when we're at the water. So till we get to the water, we can probably use this ambience, and I'll just kind of cut it here. And it's nice. It kind of just makes it feel a little bit more full. Again, I'll double click on this name and I'll call it AMB for ambience. Let's go back to our sound library. And this time I'm going to type forest water. These actually might have come up for you as well, but these are ambience that have a little bit more water in them. So maybe that can go around this part when she's down by the water. Let's grab that and just throw that in here in the same track. Maybe just trim that a little bit. Let's see how that goes. And that works. Again, that needs some mixing. We could use some more sound effects here. We could use some more sound effects when she's swishing in the water. That's all stuff you can add if you like. That's the general workflow. Now let's talk about the ambience for the waterfall. We have another water. This is water 120. It sounds a little bit more waterfallish here. Let's take a look at that. There. It's not super strong, but we're just going to have that under our music and everything just to make everything feel a little bit more cohesive. Again, I'm just using the same shortcuts that I would in the edit page, just selecting that, hitting Control / to delete it. And maybe I'll hold down Alt and grab this other forest spaces and just put that in there too. Same thing, cut it right there. And you know what? What the heck? Maybe I'll right click on this and change the color to teal for water. Change this one to maybe like more navy for different water, and the green will be the forest. So it's just a nice little visual way to see what our ambience is doing. There's another advantage of having the video tracks here, and I'll hold down Alt and zoom in, and I can adjust this edit to be right at the same time that that edit happens in our video. So now we have everything pretty much laid in. Now it's time to actually make it sound good, because it's kind of a mess right now. Again, ideally, you could go through and put footsteps throughout the entire project. You'd add all kinds of different Foley and everything. If you want to go to that extreme, you have all of the tools to be able to do that here in Fairlight. This might be a project that doesn't need so much treatment. It kind of depends on what you want to do and what the client wants to do if you're getting paid to make something like this. So let's start with a basic audio mix. The first thing that we want to do when you're mixing your audio is actually adjust the levels of the tracks. That's before you get into filters, before you do anything really. So I'm going to close our sound library, and I'm going to take the edge of our mixer and just drag it to the left. And now we have all of our different tracks here with our faders, and each of these faders is for each track. So it doesn't change each clip, it changes everything that happens in that track. And so they're kind of grouped that way. And what I like to do, especially with ambience, is turn it all the way down, but you can really just kind of turn everything down to start out with, except for maybe the voiceover. Just start with one track and play it back and see how it goes. We are going to add some filters to the voiceover, so this is going to be just pretty rough, but let's try it. I'm going to make sure everything is unsoloed, unmuted, and I'm going to hold down Shift and roll with my mouse so that I can size all my tracks all at once, and I'll just size them up so I can see them. And I'll hit Shift Z so we can see our whole project. This is just a nice way to look at everything. So let's start with our voiceover.
At Yosemite National Park, you will not only notice trees, but also logs, which used to be trees. You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees. You can look at other trees and mountains.
All right, so that sounds pretty good. Like I said, we are going to put some filters over this in a second, but let's get a general, just kind of a rough mix. Our next track is our music track, and what I'm going to do is just play through this, and I'm going to bring up our fader so that our music sounds loud enough without being overbearing.
Trees, but also logs, which used to be trees. You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees.
Something like that.
You can look at other trees and mountains.
Okay, great. Now let's take a look at our footsteps section here. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit.
You can walk.
So now we're going to take our footsteps and I'm going to push those up as we're playing it. I'll start with something like this.
You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees.
Can really bring these footsteps up a lot.
You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees.
Usually the way I like to mix is bring it a little bit too loud and then just dial it back.
You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees.
Just so you barely notice it. Same thing with the creaks. Creaks are going to be really noticeable. I'll just start them at like -12.
You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees.
Let's keep going.
You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees.
Yeah, so that's really subtle.
You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees.
There we go. And then let's take a look at our ambience.
You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees. You can look at other trees and
There we go.
mountains.
And so this ambience is just barely loud enough.
There's even a place where you can walk down.
And this is the loudest part. This Forest Spaces 105 is the loudest one.
And mountains.
So we want to make sure that the other ones are kind of a similar loudness. So I'm going to just solo that track. I can select this Spaces Water. I'll go up to in the inspector and I can just push the volume up a little bit here in the inspector. Let's push it up like 6, see how it sounds. Maybe a little more, 16. Yeah, maybe not quite that much, maybe 10. All right, so you are going to hear a difference, which is fine. We just want it to be a similar level. And let's go to Forest, the second one, and we'll do the same thing. In the inspector, I'll try and boost that up by like 10 or 11 or so. See how it sounds. I actually probably boost it up because it's supposed to be a big waterfall. Something like that. That's good. And now I want these to just kind of transition because even if it is cutting to a different clip, it's a little bit less jarring if we crossfade it. So I'm going to right click just on the edge in between a couple of these and say add 24 frame crossfade. That's just going to give us a nice little transition there. Yeah, and maybe we'll even do it a little bit longer here. Yeah, really if it's hard to notice when it's soloed, there's no way you're going to notice it when it's not soloed. And let's look, same thing here. We'll just do a quick crossfade. We'll just adjust this so that it comes in when it's supposed to. Yeah, that works. Same thing, big old crossfade here. Yeah, that's nice, especially with that zoom out. That works really well. Maybe we'll fade it out before the music fades out so you don't notice it. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna unsolo this.
Sense of awe. Aw.
Forgot about that part. All right.
Walk on a bridge that also used to be trees.
All right, so that's pretty much how you would do a mix for your project. Now, really an important part for voiceover, anytime that you have dialogue that you really want people to hear, that you don't want people to, have to turn the volume up and down, it's a really good idea to put a compressor on it. And a compressor is a kind of audio filter that basically makes the louder parts of your audio quieter to kind of be on the same level as the quieter parts. And then you can take that whole thing and make it louder. So basically it just kind of normalizes everything. So we can do this on our track. So let's select our voiceover track. And this first strip here in our mixer, we could add an effect for this, but we actually have a built-in compressor here in the dynamics. So I'm going to double click on this just blank square right by dynamics. And that brings up this really nice dynamics panel. This thing is the bomb. It makes it really easy to add a compressor and a bunch of different kind of dynamics controls to your audio. Dynamics is just basically the differences between the loud and quiet parts. So you can do stuff like a noise gate. You can make sure sure things don't go over a certain level. It's just a really nice way to work. So what we're going to do is add a compressor, and all we have to do since we added this to our first track is just click on compressor, and that's going to make a little green line right here. And really what that is doing is the loudest parts, anything that's over this threshold, -15, is getting squished down. It's pretty much just getting half as loud as it normally would. What I like to do is just grab this ratio and boost it up to somewhere like 7 or 8, something like that. And let's play that back and see what's happening.
So it's great forests and hiking trails.
You can see what happens is anything that's over that 15 right here, this little blue mark,
you will not only notice
that's things that are getting turned down.
trees, but also logs.
So we don't want this whole thing turned down. What we're really doing is just limiting the loud parts, and now we got to boost it up. We're going to do that with makeup. So I'm going to go back a little bit, and I'm going to boost makeup so that it comes in, I don't know, at like 8 or 9.
Forests and hiking trails. If you go on an adventure at Yosemite National Park, you will not only notice
And now things are coming through really loud.
also
really nice.
logs, which used to be trees.
And everything comes in kind of at the same level. It's just a really quick way to do some mixing without going through and leveling every single part, right? So something like that.
At Yosemite National Park, you will not only notice
The other thing I'm going to do is turn on this limiter, and I'm going to boost this threshold to like -3 or so. All that's doing is just anything that comes over -3, it's just going to turn down. So that means that our signal is not going to be clipping. It's not going to sound terrible when we render it.
an adventure at Yosemite National Park, you will not only notice trees, but also logs, which used to be trees.
There.
You can walk on a bridge.
So now we have a much, much louder VO, which we can kind of take everything and boost it up now to make a lot of sense with our music.
An adventure at Yosemite National Park, you will not only notice trees, but also logs,
Might want to boost our
which
music
used
a
to
little
be
more,
trees.
actually.
You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees. You can look at other trees.
And actually, we can see in our main right here that things are actually a little bit too loud.
To be trees. You can walk
When those little red lights come on, it means it's too loud, right? And so what we could do a few things. I think what I'll probably do is just go back to our dynamics and just push this makeup down a little bit, because we're just boosting it too much. We don't need to boost it so much.
Yosemite National Park, you will not only notice trees.
There we go. I'll close this window, see how it sounds.
If you go on an adventure at Yosemite National Park, you will not only notice trees, but
And let's just take some of this down.
forests and hiking trails.
And really what I'm doing is just listening through this a few times just to make sure that I can hear the VO over the music. The music isn't too distracting, but it still feels full, right? Another way that you can kind of make your music a little bit louder without it drowning out the words is to use an EQ. This is a really simple trick, something that I've been using forever. Really, on the second track, which is our music track, you can double click on this little blue line, and that'll bring up our track equalizer. If you're not familiar with an equalizer, it's basically just a graph of the frequencies in a sound, and it's just turning up certain frequencies or turning down certain frequencies. So the human voice is usually somewhere around 1K or 2K, somewhere in here. And so what we can actually do is take this number 4, and I can just turn it down a little bit right there. So it's not going to change the sound of our music a whole lot, but it is going to make those frequencies where I'm speaking just a little bit less muddy in our music track.
Great forests and hiking trails.
And you'll find that when you do this,
if you go on an adventure,
you can actually have pretty loud music and still
you will not
hear
only
what the
notice
VO is saying.
trees, but also logs, which used to be trees. You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees. You can look at other trees and mountains. There's even a place where you can walk down from all the trees to the water. Dip your hand in that water and feel the cool embrace of the mountain stream. On your hike, you may see many wonderful things, but the real beauty is the sheer sense of awe.
And there we have it.
Aww.
So those are some of the major tools that you'd use to just kind of get a basic mix. One other quick trick I'll show you when it comes to mixing VO and music. I'll just solo both of these real quick.
To the water.
With this dynamics panel, if I double click on it for our second track, our music track, I can actually turn on a compressor and kind of turn up this ratio. And what's going to happen is anytime that our music is over -15, it's going to turn it down pretty hard, which we don't really need to do. If we did that, it's just basically going to make our music quieter. So
only notice trees, but also
and the more we turn
logs,
turn down that ratio, turn up that ratio, it's going to make that music quieter.
Walk on a bridge that also used to be trees.
Maybe I'll set my threshold to like -17, something like that.
At other trees.
But the cool thing is that we can actually use a different signal to control how loud this music goes. So we could use our signal from our VO. So in my dynamics for my music, I'm just going to click listen. What that's going to do is listen to whatever sound that we kind of pump into it using a compressor, and it's going to turn down our music whenever that sound gets loud. So this is great if we're trying to talk over some music. So I'll double click on our dynamics panel for our VO, and I'm just going to hit send. All that's going to do is just send that audio to my second track, and it's going to turn it down when I talk. So check this out.
Yosemite National Park, known for its waterfalls.
So that gain
but
reduction,
also its great forests.
That's pushing it down anytime that I talk.
If you go on an
So that's a great way to kind of dip your music under your audio. But what you're going to want to do is turn up your attack a lot, turn up your hold a lot, and turn up your release a lot. This is basically just how fast things change. If you have it too fast, it's going to kind of sound like the sound is pumping like woo, 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 woo. And you don't want that. So you want them nice and slow so it's nice and easy.
Yosemite National Park.
And now you can see that this moves a lot slower.
But also its great forests.
It's turning it down.
Trails. If you go on an adventure at Yosemite National Park, you will not only notice
and we'll just
trees,
push up that hold a little bit.
Also logs, which used to be trees.
Maybe not quite that much.
You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees. You can look at other trees.
And this is another one of those things that
mountains. There's even a place where you can walk down from all the trees to the water.
This is another one of those things that is good to make really strong and then dial back.
You will not only notice trees.
So right now you can really hear that sound moving. And so what I could do is push up my threshold, and that won't turn it down as much.
Also logs.
Could also make my ratio a little bit less.
Used to be trees. You can walk on a bridge that also used to be trees. You can look at other trees and mountains. There's even a place where you can walk down from all the trees to the water. Dip your
and you really just have to play with it to get it to sound natural. But that's still a lot less work than going through and making your music quieter every single time that you stop talking. Of course, you could do that if you wanted to.
Water and feel the cool embrace of the mountain stream. On your hike, you may...
So that's a way that you could do it. I'm actually going to turn that off for this project just so we don't have kind of that changing.
Dip your
we'll just keep it really,
water and
really
the
steady.
Cool embrace of the mountain stream. On your hike, you may see many wonderful things, but the real beauty is the sheer sense of awe.
All right, so now we have this basically mixed, and it's pretty good, but now that we have the levels kind of where we're going to have them,
but the real beauty,
we can start to hear some of the little things that are kind of coming out in the VO. Things like lip smacking and breaths and stuff like that, which happens anytime that you have a voiceover. Sometimes it's noticeable, sometimes it's not. But if we zoom in here and make our track really big, we can move around, we can see things like this little click right here. And if we wanted to, we could grab the edge of this and just roll it this way. That's a way to do it. But one of the advantages to working in Fairlight is with the range selection tool. So the second tool right here is range selection. And this is a great way to just select parts of your audio just with a box and delete them. So it's just a super quick way to get rid of, silence or noise or stuff that you just want to quickly trim out.
But the real beauty is the sheer sense of awe.
It's generally a good idea, especially if you have a really noisy mic, to kind of trim out these parts in your audio and then fade the edges out like this. I'll hit Alt-X to get rid of my in and out. That's just kind of a nice way to do that.
You may see many wonderful things, but the real beauty.
And so that's just a really nice way to get really granular when it comes to editing your audio. You can take out breaths, things like that. Just goes really quick. You can just page through and get rid of all those things that are obviously making a little bit more noise than they need to be.
There's even a place where you can walk down from all the trees to the water.
And a lot of people will say that you have to fade every single clip. And I'd say that's certainly a good idea. I won't pretend like I always fade every single clip. It just doesn't happen all the time. But I think that is generally best practice.
There's even a place.
And it makes it easy. You just grab the edge and move it in a little bit.
There's even a place where you can walk down from all the trees.
But that's how you would get in and really, really adjust things. Cut out parts that you don't like.
You could
See this part, kind of a lip smack, can just get rid of that. And up here next to our selection tools, we actually have a third icon. This is called edit selection mode. This is kind of a hybrid of both the normal mode and the range mode. And really what it does is it's in ranged mode if you click towards the top of the track, but if you mouse over the bottom of the track, it's just kind of normal selection mode. So you can easily grab stuff and move them around, that kind of thing, where you can't really do that as easily with the range selection mode. You kind of have to make selections first. So definitely play with those kind of things. Again, if you want to split a clip, you could either use a keyboard shortcut. You could also hit these scissors, which for some reason is called razor, which is really dumb, but okay. But yeah, that's how you would get in and edit your audio. Now, let's say you wanted to add an audio effect. That's something that you could go to your effects library and you could do something like, say I want to add some reverb to this. I'll just solo it real quick. I can add it to a clip just by dragging onto the clip, and then we'll have the controls come up, which we're not going to go over all the controls for every effect, but
Yosemite National Park, known for its waterfalls.
And so that's just applied to the clip. You can also apply it to a track just by grabbing it and dragging it onto the actual header of the track. And that'll put it over everything in the track.
So it's great forests.
Right? You can do the same thing by going over here to our mixer right here where it says effects and hit plus. And it's kind of the same thing. Grab reverb and put it on there. And this is where you can kind of stack different effects and put them on each track.
And mountains.
And to get rid of them, you can just click on the effect in the mixer and hit delete plugin. There are a ton of things to go over here in this page. We're not going to spend a whole lot more time on it just because that really gets into the minutia of audio editing. A couple more things I do want to show you though is a way to add a bus and a way to record to the timeline.